University of South Asia. For more details, www.usa.edu.pk.
Assalamu alaikum dear students. My name is Asifa Murtaza and I am your course instructor for the course of Vitamins in Nutrition. So dear students, in today's lecture we are going to study about the first water soluble vitamin, which is known as vitamin B1 or thiamine. In today's lecture you will become familiar with the structure, food sources as well as recommended dietary allowances of thiamine. You will also learn about the digestion, absorption, transportation as well as storage of vitamin B. You will also learn about the functions of thiamine along with the problems which may arise due to deficiency or toxicity of vitamin B1. The structure formula of thiamine consists of a pyrimidine ring and a thiazole moiety, which means it has one of the two parts, which are linked by a methylene bridge. The need for thiamine was first realized in the late 1800s by a Dutchman named as C. Eichmann, when it was first discovered that fowl fed a diet of cooked, polished rice developed neurological problems which are now called as beriberi. The substance initially called thiamine that corrected the problems was first isolated from rice bran in 1912 by Casimir Funk. The vitamin's structure, which was discovered by R. Williams from the United States, was not determined until about the mid-1930s. Thiamine is widely distributed in foods including meat, legumes, whole and fortified or enriched grain products, cereals as well as breads. Yeast, wheat germ and soy meal also contain significant amounts of the vitamin. In supplemental form, thiamine is found mainly as thiamine hydrochloride or as thiamine mononitrate salt. So how does vitamin B1 gets digested in the body? In plants, thiamine exists in a free, non-phosphorylated form. However, in animal products, 95% of thiamine occurs in a phosphorylated form, primarily as thiamine diphosphate, which is also called as thiamine pyrophosphate. Intestinal phosphatases hydrolyze the phosphates from the thiamine diphosphate prior to absorption in the human body. So what happens once this vitamin B1 gets digested? Absorption of thiamine from foods is thought to be high. Occasionally, however, anti-thiamine factors may be present in the diet. For example, thiaminases, which are present in raw fish, catalyze the cleavage of thiamine. Thus, it destroys the vitamin. These thiaminases are thermolabile, so cooking fish renders the enzyme inactive. Other anti-thiamine factors include polyhydroxyphenols such as tannic and caffeic acids. Polyhydroxyphenols, which are thermostables, are found in coffee, tea, betel nuts, and certain fruits and vegetables such as blueberries, blackcurrant, Brussels sprouts as well as red cabbage. These polyhydroxyphenols inactivate thiamine by an oxidative process. The destructive process can be facilitated by the presence of divalent minerals such as calcium as well as magnesium. Thiamine destruction may be prevented, however, by the presence of reducing compounds such as vitamin C and citric acid. Absorption of thiamine occurs primarily in the jejunum, with lesser amounts absorbed in the duodenum and ileum. Free thiamine, not the phosphorylated thiamine, is absorbed into the intestinal mucosal cells. Yet, within the mucosal cells, thiamine may be phosphorylated. That is, it will be converted into a phosphate ester form. Absorption of thiamine can be both active as well as passive, which is depending on the amount of the vitamin presented in the intestine for absorption. When intakes of thiamine are high, absorption is predominantly by passive diffusion. At low physiological concentrations, thiamine absorption is active and is sodium dependent. Some studies have demonstrated that sodium independent carrier-mediated transport is also included in thiamine absorption. Two thiamine transporters from the SLC19 gene family have been characterized. The protein carriers are called as thymine transporter 1 and thymine transporter 2. Both of these carriers are found in a variety of tissues including the intestine and kidneys, and these are thought to exchange thymine for H1 ions as part of an antiport carrier system. Defects in the gene SLC19A2, which codes for thymine transporter 1, have been shown to cause vitamin B1 or thiamine deficiency in the human body. Thymine transport across the basolateral membrane occurs by a thymine antiport system. Ethanol ingestion interferes with active transport of thymine from the mucosal cells across the basolateral membrane, but not the brush border membrane. Now, this absorbed thymine will go to the blood. In the blood, it is typically either in its free form, or it is bound to albumin, or it is found as thymine monophosphate, also termed as TMP. Almost 90% of the thymine in the blood is present within the blood cells. Transport of thymine into red blood cells is thought to occur by facilitated diffusion, whereas transport into the other tissues require energy. Only free thymine or TMP form is thought to be able to cross the cell membranes. In red blood cells, most thymine exists as TDP with smaller amounts of free thymine and thymine monophosphate. Following the absorption, most free thymine is taken up by the liver and phosphorylated such that thymine is converted to its coenzyme phosphorylated form, which is thymine diphosphate, or we may term it as TDP. Conversion of thymine to TDP requires adenosine triphosphate, which is ATP, as well as thymine pyrophosphokinases, which is an enzyme found in the liver, brain, and other tissues of the body. About 80% of the total thymine in the body exists as TDP. Another form of thymine, which is thymine triphosphate, or we may term it as TTP, represents about 10% of total body thymine. This form is synthesized by action of a TDP-ATP phosphoryl transferase that phosphorylates the TDP form. This TDP then can be converted to thymine monophosphate by thymine diphosphatase enzyme. Thymine monophosphate can be then converted to free thymine by thymine monophosphatase enzyme. Thymine triphosphate as well as thymine diphosphate and monophosphate forms can be found in small amounts in several tissues, including the brain, heart, liver, muscles, as well as kidney. The human body contains approximately 30 mg of thymine, with relatively high but still small concentrations found in the liver, skeletal muscles, heart, kidney, as well as in the brain. In fact, skeletal muscles are thought to contain about half of the body's thymine. So now, dear students, we are going to discuss some major functions of thymine. Thymine plays essential coenzyme as well as non-coenzyme roles in the body. These roles include, number one, the energy transformation, in which thymine acts as a coenzyme. It is also involved in the synthesis of pentoses and nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide phosphate, which is NADPH. In this, it also acts as a coenzyme. Apart from this, another function of thymine is in the membrane and nerve conduction, in which it functions and acts as a non-coenzyme. So dear students, the recommendations as guided by Institute of Medicine for men and women are 1.2 mg per day as well as 1.1 mg per day respectively. Whereas for pregnant and lactating females, these requirements are 1.4 mg per day. So what happens if thymine, which is a water-soluble vitamin, gets deficient in the human body? Its deficiency can lead to beriberi disease. One of the first symptoms of thymine deficiency is a loss of appetite as well as weight loss. As the deficiency worsens, cardiovascular system involvement such as hypertrophy and altered heart rate, along with some neurological symptoms which include apathy, confusion, decreased short-term memory, and irritability will appear in a thiamine deficient person. So there are three basic types of beriberi which has been identified. The first type is dry beriberi, second wet beriberi, whereas the third type is acute beriberi. And we are going to discuss them one by one. So dry beriberi is found predominantly in older adults, and it is thought to result from a chronic low thiamine intake, especially if it occurs in combination with a high carbohydrate intake. Dry beriberi is characterized by muscle weakness and wasting, especially in the lower extremities and peripheral neuropathy. The neuropathy consists of symmetrical sensory as well as motor nerve conduction problems, which mostly affects the distal parts of the limb, which include the ankles, feet, wrist as well as hands. The second type of beriberi is wet beriberi. It results in most extensive cardiovascular system involvement as compared to the dry form. This includes cardiomegaly, which is the enlargement of heart, rapid heartbeat, which is termed as tachycardia, right side heart failure with secondary respiratory involvement, and peripheral edema are common symptoms along with peripheral neuropathy in the wet beriberi disease. The third form of this acute deficiency disease is acute beriberi. Now this type is associated with anorexia, vomiting, lactic acidosis, which is the lack of thiamine which is needed to convert pyruvate to acetyl-CoA. Thus it causes the pyruvate to be converted to lactic acid. This lactic acid then accumulates and causes acidosis. Apart from that, altered heart rate and cardiomegaly is also associated with acute beriberi. The use of parenteral nutrition devoid of thiamine can cause acute thiamine deficiency within a few weeks of its administration. Thiamine deficiency is often associated with alcoholism. Wernicke encephalopathy or Wernicke-Korsakoff syndrome, which is a neuropsychological complication, is also commonly found in those with alcoholism and AIDS, as well as in those who are receiving parenteral nutrition that is high in dextrose and low or absent in vitamin B1 or thiamine. People with alcohol dependency are particularly prone to vitamin B1 or thiamine deficiency because of decreased intake of the vitamin from decreased food consumption, as well as increased requirement for the vitamin because of liver damage, that is due to decreased liver function, which impairs the TDP formation and consequently vitamin usage. And the third reason is due to decreased thiamine absorption. Wernicke encephalopathy is characterized by ophthalmoplegia, which is paralysis of the ocular muscles. Apart from that, it is characterized by nystagmus, which is constant involuntary eyeball movement. It is also characterized by ataxia, which is impaired muscle coordination, as well as loss of recent memory and confusion. Thiamine deficiency is also fairly prevalent in people with congestive heart failure. The higher prevalence is thought to be attributable to low intakes and increased urinary thiamine losses, which are secondary to diuretic usage. Treatment of this deficiency consists of therapeutic oral doses, that is 100 mg or more of thiamine, or intravenous doses of about 50 mg or more. Typically, some aspects of confusion and ophthalmoplegia begin to improve with the massive thiamine doses. Elderly populations are also at an increased risk for thiamine deficiency. People with diseases that impair absorption of the vitamin, for example, some gastrointestinal tract cancers, biliary disease, as well as inflammatory bowel disease, put a person at a greater risk of developing vitamin B1 deficiency. Apart from that, excess glucose infusion intravenously and ingestion of diets that are made up primarily of refined, unenriched grain products necessitate the increased thiamine intake in the diet of a person. So what happens if toxicity of vitamin B1 occurs? There appears to be little danger of thiamine toxicity associated with oral intake of large amounts, that is up to 500 mg per day for 1 month. Excessive thiamine, that is 100 times the recommended amount, if this amount is administered intravenously or intramuscularly. It has been associated with headache, convulsions, cardiac arrhythmia, as well as anaphylactic shock, among other signs. Therefore, no tolerable upper level intake of vitamin B1 has been established. So dear students, in today's lecture we discussed about vitamin B1, which is also known as thiamine. Its recommendations are 1.2 and 1.1 mg per day for men as well as women. The major food sources of vitamin B1 include whole grains, fortified or enriched grain products, whereas moderate amounts are also present in some nutritious foods. So dear students, this is all from today's class. I hope you have understood it well. If there is any confusion or any query, we will discuss it in interactive session. Till then, take care and Allah Hafiz.
University of South Asia. For more details, www.usa.edu.pk